Well, what's up with you? So actually this is fantastic because I've been looking forward to this. I think this is a cool thing
For
if
us
we
to do every
do
week.
to do every week because it could turn into something.
Right. It could turn
It
into
could turn
something
into
because
something.
we always used to have interesting conversations. So we're always going to have to, each Sunday, we're going to have to think of new topics. And so I'm trying to think of like, what should we talk about?
Well, I have some things to talk about. Actually, I'll plug
Okay.
in my
'Cause
headphones.
what
But
I, what,
also,
what I really like about talking with you is that you always seem to remember stories that I might have been a little indisposed for to remember. So, you help, you know, recharge that, that light that I, what it used to be my memory at one point.
well, last time we talked though, you remembered a few things that I forgot. So,
Yeah.
we kind of
So I think we're almost equally, you know, responsible for being able to do that.
And
Hopefully.
also, this is cool because I was sort of thinking of what we could call this. This might be cheesy, you might not like it or whatever, but see, actually, right now it's yesterday in California for me, and in Finland it's tomorrow for you. So I was like, oh, maybe we could call it yesterday and tomorrow
There you go.
because it's pretty
Yes,
crazy
yes,
that
tomorrow,
yes,
tomorrow
tomorrow.
today, tomorrow to stay. That's bad. Yeah,
So
I like it.
so yeah, yeah, yeah. And in the meantime, I just had, I just had my son was just born a few
I,
weeks ago.
I was going to ask you, how's that going?
It's been such a crazy ride because he came a little early. So when babies are born a little early, they keep them in the hospital. And
Hmm.
fortunately, here in Totoku, they have one of the best, actually the best place for having premature babies. So he's in the best place, and he's actually doing really, really good.
Good.
So I'm super happy.
They usually
Yeah.
do. I have a nephew who was a preemie very early.
You know who else was a preemie that I didn't know? Murray. Murray just told me he was a preemie. And he,
Well, there goes, there goes that.
yeah, oh boy. Now he's doomed. He's doomed.
No,
But yeah,
Murray's fine. Murray's
yeah,
fine.
Murray's taller because I was
I haven't talked to him in like years though, I think.
he's been busy. I've been talking to him off and on, but he's hard to get a hold of. But I'm sure he'll be watching this and he'll be like, I want to talk again, so that'll be fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I only gave a few people my phone number. I thought, now I got my own phone.
Hey, all
I'm
right.
actually on my own phone. So I've been, finding people and giving them my number and stuff. So,
Okay.
but you're
Well,
in Finland, and I have, if you remember, Phil Bowman is in England, and he can text me, but I can't text him.
yeah, it's weird. Their phone plans here in Europe are crazy because they can text people in the US and it doesn't cost anything. But as you know, in the US, like texting people in Europe, it's like either you can't or it's going to be like $50 a text or something. So it's crazy.
Right. Or you could just do like there's some other thing you can do, right? Like some kind
WhatsApp.
of like
That's what I
yeah,
do.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know why they charge you if you could just go and do that for free anyway. Well, whatever. We're
Yeah.
off topic.
Well, sort of. But everybody, there's a lot of people in the chats today. Wow. But how are you guys liking having a phone? Dylan wants to know do you like having a phone now?
My wife asked me that today. She's like, "So what about the phone? Is it life changing?" Not really. I was under the impression that if you texted somebody, they got it right away and could answer you. But that's not true because they could not have their phone on them. And then people text me and I don't get back to them. So it's kind of like leaving a message, just like on a
Hmm.
landline, you know? I get to give up my landline now. So now I never answer the landline. So that's just reserved for like people that are trying to sell me something and creditors and stuff like that.
Uh, 96 fan club. They said, "Hey, dudes from Edinburgh, Scotland." So we got Edinburgh, Scotland in the house. That's cool.
Sweet.
Um, and yeah, so a lot of people, San Diego. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, and I don't think I've really talked to you about this in general ever. I don't think. is
Good.
and yeah,
Fresh.
yeah. So, and I'm excited because when I've been promoting this live stream, I've been using Foreign Objects music to promote
Hmm.
the live streams. And I sort of want to talk to you about Foreign Objects,
Sure.
if that's yeah, yeah. Um, and I met you in what 1996 or 1997 at the Groundhog Studio, something like that.
97.
And before that, you were doing Foreign Objects.
Hmm. Yeah.
And funny story is when I was working at Ibanez, because I worked for Ibanez for like 10 years or whatever, and a lot of amazing guitar players were working there, checking the guitars, but of course they were all
Oh,
really
yeah.
good. And this one
The
guy,
best players work at the companies.
yeah, dude,
Yeah.
this one guy was such a shredder. He was like everybody at the Ibanez that worked there were always like mad at him because every time he would check a guitar, he'd be like, and he'd be all ripping it up. And
Hmm.
I remember talking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, man, like I've been listening to Foreign Object, man. Darren is freaking awesome as shit." And like he was like the head shredder. He was like, "Yeah, man, he's a fucking shredder." So I I remember that, and I still, like you said, I remember a
Yeah,
lot of
you remember
things.
that, and you wanted to tell him Darren's not a shredder because I'm not a shredder.
But now this is funny because I remember, this story when you and Chad were sitting down, and you were trying to you guys had this like 4 hour argument conversation about how you were telling him like, dude, shredding is so stupid. I used to do that. It's so easy. I don't want to do that. This is when you were like dealing with like the four strings and all that stuff, and he was like, what are you talking about? And you were trying to you guys were into an argument about how he thought shredding was awesome and you thought it was stupid. And
Well, you know what? You know what it was. I remember that clear as day, as I do most arguments. And the reason that I felt that way at the time is because I was obsessed with trying to get a record deal and somehow trying to uh, forget about my tastes in early '90s metal, where my favorite bands did shred. So at that time, grunge was taking over, and those grunge bands pretty much said it was insinuated, but if you put guitar solos on your records or your demos, no record company is going to give you a shot because you're going to be considered '80s, and shredding was considered '80s and behind the times. So I was so aggravated by this new rule in the music industry where if you showed off on your guitar, you were not cool. It was kind of like the better you were, the worse your chances were at getting anywhere. Because if you remember, like the year before Nirvana, it was all Poison and Warrant and Slaughter and Dangerous Toys and Winger, and then like that, all those awesome guitar players were gone and replaced by Kurt Cobain, who was a good songwriter, but then you had other people that wanted to be Kurt Cobain, and it was just so much cooler to not play guitar solos. So I was not into guitar solos for so long because I thought I have to jump aboard this in some way. I have to hide the fact that I do like shredding and I do like shredding guitar players, but I was like 20 or 19 and I was afraid that I wasn't going to be able to get a record deal just because of my wanting guitar solos in my music. You know what I'm saying? Like I was caught between like my moral ethics and my fear of not being accepted by a record company, which these days doesn't matter because everything's in and out. So nowadays, if music is good, it's good, and people find it. It's not. Music popularity isn't determined by MTV and radio anymore. So it's cool that you could do that. But I was never a good lead guitar player. So that was probably another reason why I said shredder sucked.
well, I would have to not necessarily agree with that because, like I said, I was listening to the Foreign Object stuffs, and you certainly sound like a very good lead guitar player. And I
Well,
think it's
which foreign objects stuff did you hear?
well, the
Because Dave
stuff.
Murphy, who is my favorite shredder of all time, did the solos for one of the albums. And then I had Ken and Dave Sudak plays lead guitar on the new Foreign Objects album, Galactic Prey, or the recent Foreign Objects. So I didn't really do any solos on the Foreign Objects.
Okay.
I just wrote
maybe.
the riff and arranged.
Yeah. But what about like the old? What about the old stuff? Like the stuff that before we met. That stuff.
The EP. Well, when we met, we had already done the EP and started on the second album, Universal Culture Shock. But that didn't have solos until 10 years, no, maybe 8 years later, when I had James Murphy play leads over the old album. So there's two different versions of that Foreign Objects album. There's the one where I didn't do guitar solos because I can't really. I would do little leads here and there, but I wasn't trying to shred or anything. And then I decided this album needs vocals because it was completely instrumental at one point. And then I did vocals on half the songs, and then James Murphy did solos on all the songs, and then we re-released it.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm listening, but Pascal said that she said, "Hey, Darren, my husband loves you. He played on stage with you guys in Brooklyn. I sent you a DM. Can you please check it?" I guess a lot of people have come up on stage. Well, not a lot, but I remember a couple people going up on stage.
It's like Jonathan Burleson. Is that his name?
I think so.
He kicked ass when he got up there. He played in Human Creation Station. When we were in Brooklyn this year, I think the kid that you just said his name, what was his name?
Well, his wife was talking, but she didn't mention his name, but it's probably Brooklyn, probably that guy.
He got up, and I think if we're talking about the right person or the same person, he got up and did Rio Bravo. Nailed it.
Okay.
He grabbed Ken's guitar, and he said, "Can I please," before the show, he said, "Can they please do Rio Bravo with you guys?" And I was like, "Why the fuck not?" So he grabbed Ken's guitar and nailed Rio Bravo.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Dave Sudak is here. He said, "Darren's hair is looking sweet."
Yeah.
And
That's because I watched it 2 days ago.
Okay. And it's funny you mentioned Winger because I just had 2 days ago I had Reb Beach. I was talking to Reb Beach, and he just released a solo album where he's only shredding and doing guitar stuff, and he's like,
You see, Winger and Reb, if you ever talk to him about this, he'll tell you Nirvana and 1991 and MTV destroyed those bands, and they were awesome. They all got dropped from their major label deals. They couldn't get new deals. They were gone. They went from selling millions of records to none. And it was because of the grunge thing. And then Beavis and Butthead had one of their nerdy characters wearing a Winger shirt, so that made Winger look nerdy and uncool. And Reb will tell you flat out that Beavis and Butthead and grunge killed off cool guitar playing, good shredding. Guitar solos, they were gone.
Yeah.
That's why there aren't any on Volume 1 or Infiltrate and then we said fuck it. By the time Answer Can Be Found came out, we said fuck it, let's put guitar solos on. We're the cool thing now. Who cares about grunge and what the industry says? So I think when we had that discussion about shredding, I think I was trying to get Chad to think like, you got to get out of that mindset of cool guitar solos still belong in this day and age because they're not cool right now. But everything swings around, and then somebody, some band comes out. I mean, even Metallica, Saint Anger, the album Saint Anger, Kirk Hammett didn't play one goddamn guitar solo on that whole album.
Yeah, and that snare drum is horrendous on that album. But that's just my opinion. So I have a.
It's just so funny, but when these things freeze, I don't know if I'm frozen.
Yeah,
it's trying to come back. Now, when you freeze, does that mean I freeze?
Well, I saw you froze, so I think if you see me freeze, that's weird. If we're both freezing, hopefully people watching we're not freezing because it's actually not that cold.
And embarrassing
expressions
like you froze like You think they'd have this technology worked out by now, but I guess not.
I know. There's a good question here from Lover of the Knot, who's a great guy who comes on the stream. He says, Darren, does that mean that you don't like Nirvana and grunge? Because there's some grunge in the CKY sound, he thinks.
Bad connection again. Hopefully.
Okay.
I
Now
can
I
be
hear you.
heard.
Now I hear you pretty good.
Okay. It's
Did
weird
you
that
hear?
it goes in and out. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, it sucks. If it keeps up, I can take you out and bring you back in, and it'll
That's all
probably
right.
work better.
We'll
But
figure it out. The grunge question.
yeah,
In 1990, there was a kid in my drama class in high school who lent me an album by the Bleach album by Nirvana before grunge had hit big. And
yeah,
I took it home. He gave me a cassette, and I took it home, and I thought, this is really cool. I can't quite classify it. And then Nevermind came out, and before anybody knew what Nevermind was, my friend John Teague had a cassette of it, and there was like a little Nirvana buzz going on in Philly, and he put it in, and I'm like, these songs are so cool. But like, it's, what is it, rock? Like, it's rock, but it's not really heavy. It was kind of like rock. I thought it was punk, basically, because the term grunge hadn't been invented yet. That happened like when Soundgarden and Pearl Jam came out. But I love Nevermind, except for the songs that are really noisy and punk, like Territorial Pissings. You know, I could do without that. Could do without the stuff where it's like, like. I just actually bought a copy of Nevermind on vinyl at Target. It's like on silver vinyl.
okay,
And I listened to the whole thing. And when Kurt wrote mellow songs, like emotional songs that had heavy parts, they're really good songs. Like Come As You Are and In Bloom and Smells Like Teen Spirit. Those songs are all great. And then after after they got blown out of proportion, I kind of I held on, you know, and then In Utero came out, and I didn't like that album that much, except I thought Rape Me should have been on Nevermind. But then, you know, can't you hear that?
Yeah,
like,
I think so.
Rape Me sounds like a Nevermind song.
Nevermind's a great album. I think Bleach is a tough one also for me to get through because of that punky lo-fi thing that they had going.
What is the song? School, No Recess, School or something?
Yeah.
On Bleach is yeah, that's a kind of a hint to what Nevermind is going to happen. And then Rape Me was a song on In Utero that I liked because I thought it should have been on Nevermind. And then I just didn't like In Utero at all. And then, of course, he unfortunately committed suicide or was murdered or whatever. And then all these people started to jump on the bandwagon of Nirvana. And then I was just like, I can't take it anymore.
I mean, I don't know how we're into this grunge topic, but while we're at it, I mean, I've watched all those conspiracy shows, and I have to say that's interesting. It's for one to think about and make up your own opinion on whether or not he was murdered or if he killed himself. But I have my thoughts.
I think I'm in the middle. I think he killed himself, but he was encouraged. That's
very possible. But
which
who
is
knows?
also murder,
Who knows?
which is in a way some people consider that murder.
Darren, Life with Distortion was the one that helped play with you guys. Can you say his name? I'm recording this since he's sleeping right now.
What's his name? Life with Distortion? Life with Distortion. He was the guy that played Rio Bravo? Life with Distortion did a killer job playing Rio Bravo. He nailed it.
And I think, I think when it comes to grunge and stuff and Nirvana, I think Dave Grohl and the drumming is the reason why I think the songs even came more alive. Obviously, Kurt was a great songwriter, but I think his drumming is the reason why that music is so, stuck around for so long, because it's just so amazing. The drums, the drums are very simple, but hard-hitting drums. Now, back to when you were like, see, this is why it's great to have you on and talk to you about these things, because these are things that I'm interested in as well. And when you're back in the day saying like, yeah, it's like late 80s, early 90s, and you're like, this guitar shredding is whatever, it's bullshit. I'm gonna try to figure out something because of that. Like that's got to be one of the reasons why CKY had that sound, because you made that decision. I mean, can you imagine if you didn't make that decision, where it would be? Like, what would you think it would be if you didn't make that decision?
Well, this is a long story that I can make very short, and I know a lot of people watching probably already know it, but it's still fun to tell. Foreign Objects was me trying to do a genre of music that was touched on very briefly in 1993, where all the death metal bands that started to sound the same, like generic death metal, a couple bands said, okay, let's stay a death metal band, but let's add some different elements. And a couple bands did some jazz, a couple bands experimented with orchestration and orchestral voices and operatic voices and stuff. That was Believer. Believer went orchestral and operatic. They had like a girl vocalist, but they used to be just a fast, violent death metal band. Cynic did this jazzy kind of thing, and they were a fusion band where neither one of the guitarists were ever really playing the same thing at the same time. And that's how they tried to expand. Then there was Atheist that kind of took a spiritual route, and jazz as well, and a little bit of Latin music in there too. And Pestilence, who was one of my favorite death metal bands already, did that album Spheres in 1993, in which they totally abandoned the Slayer beat, and they abandoned a lot of different things. And they got this really weird guitar sound with the Zoom 9010 processor that I'm still trying to get my hands on one because I want to use that guitar sound. But on Spheres in 1993, the new thing was death metal is still cool, but when the bands experiment with all different kinds of music, because you can do that with metal. Lots of kinds of music you got to stay within a limitation. Like Taylor Swift can't say, I want to do a death metal song, or
Yeah.
Justin Bieber or whatever his name is. He can't say, I'm going to do this quick double bass song. You lose your fans. So the only genre of music that I ever saw that wasn't limited by anything, I mean, you could rap in death metal. And that's why I like this so much, because you could write aggressive stuff. But the point is that these bands all put out these four bands, Believer, Cynic, Atheist, and Pestilence, all put out these really cool genre-defying, boundary-slaying albums that all flopped. They lost all their hardcore death metal fans. But not me. I said, okay, these guys started this kind of music, and they died from it. Their fans left. If I started sounding like that, maybe I could take it to another level and go with this genre of this like spacey science fiction, jazz, fusion things where there's two different riffs going at one time and they complement each other. And guitar synths where you could play leads, but it could sound like a violin or a trumpet. Or stuff. There's stuff on the Pestilence Spheres record where there's trumpet solos going on in the back, but it's a guitar synth doing it. So I got
that
really
Roland
interested.
thing, yeah.
It was a genre of music that never got a following. So, and I loved that idea. I loved the idea of getting a bunch of pedals and making my guitar sound mid-rangey and chorusy and like coming up with all these things. And I didn't know what they were using in the studio because the guitar sound is so weird and some people can't stand it, but I find it fascinating now. I didn't like it in the beginning, but it's a very mid-range, annoying guitar sound that sounds like space, like spacey science fiction. So I tried to take that genre and I made Foreign Objects out of that. And then from Foreign Objects, we decided to do something else, and then it turned into Oil. And then Oil was me trying to chase grunge trends, because I'm like, I'm not getting anywhere with this boundary slaying death metal genre either. Everybody was saying, oh, it's so awesome, but it's too complicated and nobody likes this shit anymore. I was like, okay. So I decided to always keep Foreign Objects going anyway. And then Oil was my attempt at trying to get a record deal so I wouldn't have to go to college. And I was so caught up with what the industry was asking for and what record companies would not invest in, no matter how good you were at it. And I learned a lesson there that you can't pretend to be into something and get away with it. So we ditched the grunge thing with the oil tapes. And that finally, I said to Jess, let's forget all kinds of music other than our root being rock. We'll be a rock band, but we won't sound like any other rock bands. And I still had all my effects and my pedals from doing Foreign Objects. And I decided I like single note songs, never been done. It could sound new and fresh. And the octave pedal helped make a single note sound bigger than just bang, bang, bang. Like it was like, it made it really thick and heavy. So I didn't want to be playing chords all the time. And I figured I could get more melody out of riffs than chords, because when you have riffs, you can either be busy and melodic with the vocals, or you can just have a riff. And that's this kind of shit that carries the song 96 Bitter Beings. Like, like that's the part of the song everybody remembers. It doesn't even have a chorus. It doesn't even have a vocal line that it's just the riff. So we lucked out in that sense.
Yeah, and it's funny.
It's funny you wanted to do. Yeah.
You bring up oil, and then I think about Deborah Stevens, and you're talking about grunge, and you remember Deb Stevens because she was, this is great, and it's funny that you bring that up because
the Queen of Calamine.
She was so oil was playing. Deborah Stevens was helping you guys out. Then they somehow convinced me, Ron, and I think Steve, we all did a Nirvana tribute band, and we were actually doing a few shows as a Nirvana tribute band, which was quite fun, by the way, because I like to play drums, and I got to do that. But that's how, like, people have to understand, like, how in like 93, 94, 95, well, 94, 90, 94, 95, like grunge was like huge. Like you did things like. It was
the only form of rock. It was the only form of rock that you could get away with. I mean, even Metallica had to do it. That's how big it was.
Yeah.
Metallica did not stick to thrash metal. Maybe the only metal bands that stuck to metal during the grunge era, were Pantera and Megadeth.
Oh, here's a question that I would like to see what you think. Pantera or Sepultura? What do you think is a heavier band?
That's so hard because you know what?
Yeah,
Sepultura
I don't know either.
Well, they asked me because I'm the metal asshole who's probably gonna say something that is gonna be considered shit talking.
I don't want to put you on the spot then, because it's a tough question.
It's okay, because I think I have a good answer.
Okay.
Sepultura put out an album called Beneath the Remains that I love. But it's the only album of theirs that I love. Because they later went on and they did something really weird with an album called Roots. And they went from a melodic Master of Puppets kind of sounding band on Beneath the Remains to like a new metal grunge band on Roots and Chaos AD, and they became too simple for me. And the melody was gone, and it was just like two notes. You know, that new metal kind of stuff, two notes. Like
Godsmack or something?
That over and over and over. Yeah, like stuff like that. But Sepultura was still heavy, but they weren't any longer a metal band to me. So Pantera, I saw Pantera live and I was blown away. So Pantera is definitely way heavier. And they stuck to, like I said earlier, if I wasn't cut off, people maybe heard me say it. Pantera said, fuck the grunge thing. They were metal all the way through 90s. and they were successful.
Hmm. Okay, good answer. Because yeah, it's a good question because I've always thought also that Pantera for me was like the heavier band, but you can get technical and be like, well, Sepultura has like all those tribal
Yeah.
beats and it's very heavy, and they're a super heavy band. I think they're both great bands, but
Well, after Max Cavalera left Sepultura, I kind of disconnected completely because I was so disappointed by KSED and Roots. I understand the tribal thing because from where they're from and what their roots are,
yeah.
which is why that was called Roots. But I
Hmm.
didn't like. I tried. I really tried to. I played Roots. I have a Japanese version of that album. I have a deluxe version of that album. I've listened to that album so many times, and it's just not for me. It's not for me. A lot of people like
Uh,
Roots, and it's considered their classic. It's their most successful. I don't get anything out of it. I'm not saying fuck those guys, fuck Sepultura, because they did make one of my favorite albums in 1989, actually. Beneath the Remains is an awesome metal record, and they were a metal band. But then they started to get a little bit involved in the trends and trying to get a more commercial appeal, which is what all bands were doing, which is what I was trying to do. So I was guilty of that too. But Pantera was just Pantera all through their career, except for those first three albums where they were kind of Warrant, Poisony.
yeah, Cowboys from Hell or whatever
No,
was
before Cowboys. They have 3 independent records before Cowboys that
okay.
was glam. And they refused to re-release them because I guess they consider them embarrassing. But I've heard some of it, and some of it's pretty cool. The
Um,
original Pantera, Phil Anselmo is not the original Pantera singer.
okay. Wow.
He joined,
I
he
didn't
joined
know
on their
that.
third album, which is called Power Metal, I think. And they were a glam band.
Hmm.
But at least they were cool enough to say fuck glam during the glam years and start a thrashier band. And they did a new take on thrash that lasted their entire career. And it survived the grunge era. It survived all that shit.
There's so many good questions in the chats, and everybody, I see your questions. I'll try to get to them, but I have a question just for Darren on my own. So I'm just going to ask you. It's not even a question. It's just I remember you and
It's a
Jess.
punishment.
No, I remember specifically that you guys were very, very much interested in like record, like no, like you know a lot about everything, like and what I mean is like you would always know like what label a band was on, you would know what their charting was, and you guys were very, very fascinated, which in retrospect is a brilliant thing to like. How did you find that? How did you get into that? Like, why did you know like that? Not only do I want to listen to the band, but I want to go on, listen and find out who signed them, who their management is, what they're charting, how many albums are they selling. Like, that's something that people are doing more and more today, it seems. But you guys were like way into that back in the day, I remember.
I guess it was like the business mind. I became,
Yeah.
at one point, I was like, maybe I should start a label and be an A&R guy. But then I thought that would be stupid because all my favorite bands don't sell records. So when I realized,
Yeah.
I used to think that if a band put out an album on a label, it was successful. I didn't know that bands bombed. I'm talking about when I'm like 16. I used to think that if a band put out records, they could do it until they broke up. I didn't know that a band is only as strong as their label is willing to tell them. And that's the way it was. So when I'm going back to the bands that were successful doing regular straight up death metal, when they all changed their style and they bombed, they were booted from their record company and they no longer had a career. So they took that risk in gambling to experiment with their sound and lost their fans. Except for me, who found it interesting that these bands were trying to put something fresh into it. A lot of people said, this is weird. This is like not death metal. I want to hear violent lyrics. I want to hear satanic lyrics. I want to hear a lot of bands started out singing about Satan and gore and ended up singing about God and spirituality and where did water come from and what's going on in space and time and the dimensions of the universe and stuff like that. They tried to, and I became so aware of and obsessed with what the numbers were for those bands because I had to maneuver. Wanting to be a musician in a successful band, I had to maneuver and figure out what worked and what didn't as far as selling, because you weren't going to get someone to sign you if you were doing something that didn't work out for someone else.
Because I
you know what I'm saying?
wanted to, yeah, and I
it's
remember
so hard for millennials to understand.
It's something that I picked up from you guys, and I used to always think about it. And I remember, again, some of the late night friendly arguments you would have with Chad would talking about how you guys know too much about everything. But looking back, it was no, you guys were you're brilliant for thinking about that in a way and today, I also think that it's really interesting because today, frozen.
Sorry, start again. You just took a second there.
Well, I just wanted to say that today, a lot of bands are using that, and they want to be perceived as something bigger than they are, and it's very difficult to find out. Everybody's struggling.
Who really is?
Yeah,
because the internet came along, and through the internet, you're allowed. If you notice, I was never really big on going onto my social medias, even though I have the social medias. I don't tweet or anything like that. But I used to get emails from companies because when you're in a band and you go to Guitar Center gives your email to this person, and then they give it to that person, and then everybody knows you're in a band. And I started getting emails all the way back to MySpace when they would say, we're a company that can get you likes and plays that are not real. They were like, if you give us $500 a month, we'll give you 100,000 plays. We'll put you in the top 10. And that shit still goes on today. You get bands that have 2 million likes. Nobody knows who the fuck they are because they're not real numbers. And you go to YouTube and when a kid sees a young YouTube kid online making YouTube videos and they already have 2 million videos, that person has 2 million views. I mean, they must be cool. So they start watching and then it spreads from there. But that's how stupid things go viral, because a lot of these kids are rich and they get their parents to pay. They get their guilty parents who don't spend enough time with them to give them money to go onto YouTube and pay for likes and plays. So I thought, no way am I going to do that, because then I'll have no idea who likes me. You know what I'm saying? Did that come through clear?
No, it's something because I've been talking to so many different bands recently, and it's something that I talk about a lot, because I think maybe 3 or 4 years ago, that tactic, if you want to call it, of getting a whole bunch of followers just so you could get people to recognize you might have been relevant. But today, I think people obviously see through it. You can go to a band's page and see they have 500,000 followers, but they have 3 comments on a post they made.
Yeah, 3 comments, right?
Yeah,
but
and it's okay, people, bullshit.
But it doesn't fool all the kids. It doesn't. I talk to my kids about it all the time, because my daughter will say, look at this girl. She has 5 million followers and all she does is paint her nails. And I'm like, she probably has 500,000 real followers now, because daddy or mommy paid the money or whoever to make her look famous so that people would see her all the time. Every time you go on YouTube, she pops up first, no matter what you're searching for.
And
so it's very hard to go viral without spending anything.
Oh, yeah. Well, of course. But I also find it very effective if you just right now we're live streaming. with you, it may be a little different because you already have a huge cult following, but still coming out, talking to people, keeping yourself relevant, getting a few extra people that might not have discovered you, one or two
Right.
extra people, that's the organically, if you want to call it. I think
Yes.
that is the moving forward, the best thing to do because 3 or 4
And
hardcore
a
dedicated
lot of
people.
people consider what we just talked about a conspiracy theory. They don't understand, especially millennials do not understand that a lot of the stuff that's viral on YouTube that does not make sense is paid for. What if you somehow, without telling me, you had $10 million in the bank and didn't know what to do with it? You could literally take what we're doing right now and make it the biggest thing on Instagram just by giving them the money to promote it. This could have 1 million views tomorrow because maybe you want to pay Instagram to make it the top thing or to give it, make sure they give it all these plays and all this stuff. That's why we don't know who's really making a difference and who's not.
And that's also why, call me old school, which I guess I have to be. I mean, at this point,
And me too.
I think that I'd rather sit around and work on getting 1 or 2 people that I didn't know before and work on doing stuff that makes them want to come and be like, oh, you know what, Maddie's cool. Like, I like watching his stuff. I like his music. I'm going to follow him. Maybe I'm going to buy his t-shirt or something like that, because to me, that's more effective than having.
That follower is so much more important than the one that the 500 people that'll go, I'll follow them, whatever. Because they're not going to keep up. They're not going to buy anything. That one follower that really likes what you're doing is going to watch you and pay attention to you. So it doesn't matter how, unless, celebrities, of course, they have a lot of followers, but like people that are not celebrities that are doing things and are more interested in impressing people with their numbers, that's not as important as, say, the 10,000 people that follow me on Facebook or whatever, that only follow me because they sought me out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Every day I
And
can
it's,
spend 8 hours a day trying to get people to follow me. But I'd rather people find out through word of mouth. I could do with the lower numbers better than I'd rather have 10,000 real interested people than 100,000, who cares?
yeah. And that's the landscape we have to navigate in today, 2021. Phil Bowman wrote, yeah, but that's just the 21st century version of advertising. Money helps you get your message out above the noise. Why does everyone think Coca-Cola? Why does everyone like Coca-Cola? Because everyone knows what Coca-Cola is. But
Well,
that's,
Coca-Cola has an advertising budget they have to spend every year so that they can write it off in taxes, but they don't need to make commercials. Plus, that's already a celebrity thing. I'm talking about artistry. I'm not talking
yeah.
about corporations and stuff like that. I'm talking about like in a musical or in an artist format. A lot
Now
of
this,
bands and artists want those numbers.
Claire Bell, she says something. I don't know if this is right, but she says labels and A&Rs today are shit, and literally suggest to you to buy fake fans on Facebook and shit. I don't know. I haven't been talking to many major labels and A&Rs. I don't know if that's true.
There aren't any major labels anymore. That's what's confusing, is that the metal and rock industry is surviving off of record companies that have been around for 20, 30 years, but it's not the major labels. Major labels have all conglomerated together and they've become like one. I think there's 2 or 3, Sony, Warner, and EMI. And
Okay.
I think they're all almost ready to just be bought up by Universal Music Group, which is going to be the one label. And Paul Pontius, who signed us to Island Records, went over to Sony. And I called him just to find out what he was up to, not to kiss his ass, like, listen to my new band. I just wanted to know what he was up to, where he was in the business. And he was managing bands for a while, but then he got hired as A&R over at Sony. And he told me, he's like, Darren, I'm not allowed to even mention the word rock or metal in this office. And they
What?
had still one band clinging on. It was Chevelle. He said, we have two bands. Judas Priest will always be on Sony, and Chevelle we're about to boot. And then I don't think they have Chevelle anymore. It's just all R&B and heartstring R&B artists that sing about, does he really love me? And then, you know, the guy singing, I wish he'd take me back. I'm really a mess. You know, it's like all stuff like, I don't know what it is. It's not even R&B. It's just pop. It's like bubblegum. And they're trying to sell and stream songs to kids.
I like this comment here. He says, I like to support the fuck out of artists I listen to. It's literally my life. Music is what saved my life, supporting you guys, and that's absolutely the least thing I can do. That's the type of person that
Yeah,
is supporting
100%.
supporting the music scene, is supporting rock and roll,
I read
supporting
those.
metal.
I get those comments every day, dude, and I love them. I love
Yeah.
I never get tired of reading it, because for every one comment where somebody is going to take the time and to actually really support you and take the time to tell you how much it's important to them is better than 2,000 fake people that are there just because somebody heard about it. I had the money to promote it or something.
And that is like we go back to that is I mean, if you want to be, you know, doing music and being an artist today, like that's the type of people that you I think you're right. I think going to like trying to get a major label sign you today is kind of like you said, it's not gonna happen. And if it does, you're probably gonna have to not be who you are, I guess.
It'll
Like
come
you
back
said, it's
around. It'll come back around. Because a lot of kids, I think a lot of the kids that are teenagers today, the guys, the males, are emasculated, and they don't know how to find the music that will get their aggression out, their pent up frustration out, which is obviously rock and metal. But there's no rock and metal being promoted on Fortnite, and it's just not in the mainstream right now. You know, it's all pop stuff in the mainstream. But there are some kids that find it, like the ones that are smart. But I think that if a normal, angry, frustrated teenager who listens to Ariana Grande because he doesn't know about real rock and roll and real aggressive music is trying to get their aggression out through listening to some kind of bubblegum, because they don't know about metal, and if they do, it's going to be AC/DC or stuff, but there's heavier stuff out there that's more suited to them. Like when I used to think Kiss was the heaviest band in the world, and then I found Ozzy and I thought he was the heaviest, and then I found Metallica and they were even heavier, and then I went on to Death and then Malevolent Creation, and it kept getting heavier and more aggressive, and I'm at peace with myself sometimes because I'm able to listen to this music of people talking about violent things that I'm never going to do because they say it for me.
That's a good point that you bring up. That is a really good point to bring up, because what is everybody listening to? What's the thing that's getting pushed the most? It's like you said, it's the fake bullshit that is not really what people
if I know
like when you
names, if I know
yeah.
the names and I don't pay attention, then you know it's getting pushed. Greta Van Fleet, Imagine Dragons, Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift. I know these things, and my kids don't listen to them. My kids listen to, well, what's her name? Bianca. What's the name of that chick you got her on vinyl? Billie Eilish. Billie Eilish.
Oh yeah, okay, I've heard of that too.
She had some kind of a push, but she went viral, God knows how, maybe with a little bit of money in promotion. But if I know about them, then you know they're getting pushed in my face. Just like Nickelback used to when they were paid for on the radio to have hit songs. The record company had to give a lot of money for them to have a hit song. But when the radio died, so did Nickelback, because the only reason people would buy a Nickelback album is because they heard it on the radio, but that's gone. Fans, where's all our record sales? And it's like, dude, you guys never had fans. You had people that liked your songs on the radio. Nobody does that anymore. It's true.
I remember you talking about Nickelback. I remember when CKY did the Godsmack Deftones tour. Remember that?
Yes, very fondly. Deftones were so fucking
And I,
cool.
yeah, but I
And
remember
very, very original,
God's.
which is credit to them. Sorry to cut you off, but we're like 5 seconds difference, and I don't know if I have time to talk or if it's your turn or what.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
But no, I remember watching the just checking out to see what Godsmack was doing, and I remember that I think back then they kind of knew what was going on, that they were being pushed so much. So they would every night they would ask the
Sterling Earn
audience
is a businessman. Yeah.
yes. So every night he would go out to the crowd and be like, "All right, everybody, who?" Yeah, he would ask the audience like, "Are you
They were
guys
just
going to
simple
come back
rock
to the
songs.
next show?" Yeah, yeah. But that's what he was doing. He knew that.
They were simple new metal band,
Hmm.
and once new metal died, so did they.
Yeah. So
I mean, they're still going,
that's
and you can keep anything going. You know,
yeah.
you can go from
Um,
being a band that sells 4 million records one year to selling 5,000 the next. That doesn't mean you have to give up and quit. You know, most bands do.
there was a car commercial here in Australia using a metal song, "Holy Diver," by the way. Well, that's
Deal.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, and that
that's
was a huge
interesting.
deal. That was all over metal and rock news because it was crazy that some big company was going to mention heavy metal. But who else is doing it? It's a very
Um,
tight knit community of bands and fans right now. It's very, very hard. It's very unmainstream to be in a rock and metal band. Because so many of them have ruined it for everybody in the '90s. You have your bands like Lit. I mean, remember all those bands there were like Lit and I
yeah,
don't even. There were like millions and millions of streams and albums, and it's like can't even remember the names of the bands. But I remember Lit was one of them. LIT. But if that was the best they had to offer, I'm sure people were like, I'm not going to listen to this shit if this is the popular shit. And now metal and rock is on its way up. It's going to swing back around because people are going to get tired of songs about their broken hearts, and you're not getting any of this ass tonight unless you say you're sorry. Or I want a ring on the. If you love it so much, put a ring on it. You know, it's pretty shallow.
yeah. It is, and a lot of bands are are creating their own little microcosms of followings, which, like I
Hmm.
said before, you can have 50,000 followers, and most people in the world probably would have never heard of a band with 50,000 followers, but that band is doing very well because those followers are very dedicated and they're
Yes.
keeping that band alive. And I would say, back to your point about labels, I would say if labels are going to start getting, realizing what's going on, those are going to be the bands probably that are going to start getting picked up by these labels again because they're already doing it without the
Hopefully.
label's help. If that
Right.
even
But
if they
then
let
why
them
would
do
a
that.
band want to go with a label?
Right. Exactly.
You know what
It's
I'm
a
saying?
tough one. I mean,
It's a
there
catch 20.
yeah.
There's going to have to be an anomaly that comes around. Maybe I can still do it. I don't know. But I'm not interested in that. I never wanted to be a rock star. I just wanted to be able to make a living off of music and have people that really enjoyed it, not people that pretended to enjoy it. Because I think there was a point where I was starting to notice that maybe 20% of CKY fans, which is a very low percentage, 20% of our fans started to like us for the wrong reasons. And I kind of got sick of that in a way. So now it feels like it's
Mm.
all about the music. And everybody who's left and everybody that's on board now with the new band is just about the music. They don't ask me how band's doing and stuff like that.
Yeah. That's that's where I think that's where we're at. I think, when I remember listening to Kurt Cobain talking about how when Teen Spirit came out and all the jocks in high school were like Teen Spirit, he was just like, man, like
That
this
made
is
him
not what I want.
miserable. It's
Yeah,
funny because I've been watching Kurt Cobain's. I watched one of his last interviews that he did, I think in Europe or Australia. I don't know. It's a British accent, I think. I think they were in Europe, and he was miserable. He had like scratches on his face that it looks like he did himself, and like he's just not happy. And it's just like you can't be happy when you're trying to express yourself musically and you have people fiddling with it that have no idea what you're about. But my thing is, why'd you sign with Geffen Records then? They needed the money because they were poor. So they
yeah,
signed a big deal and they regretted it later because they wanted to eat, but they probably didn't want to be rich. And then they got rich. And then when you get rich, all the leeches come around, and you know who I'm talking about, who came around him.
yeah.
So
Uh, there's just so many. I'm sorry, I'm paying attention, but there's so many comments flying, and it's interesting. I'm 100% about your music, Darren. Uh, my my husband loves your music aside from Promiscuous Daughter. Okay. Well, that's an interesting song. That's an interesting comment to bring up. But that's a good song though. I like that song. Okay.
I think it should be re-recorded. I think the mix turned out a little weird. I think it could have been punchier. And I remember Walt McCleary
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
hearing Promiscuous Daughter, and I'll never forget this clear as day. He said, "Oh, come on, guys, you can make it punchier and heavier than that." And I heard it before he said it, and I was like, I'm not the only one that thinks that. I think that there's some cool parts in that song, but it could have been more explosive, you know.
Okay, well that's interesting. So talking about that, back in the Groundhog days and stuff, but then fast forwarding to the music that you're releasing now with 96, and I've told you this, I believe. I'm so happy to hear that you have completely different people, different producers. You know who I'm talking about. That's not because the sound that you're coming out with now is like the sound that I think that you've probably always wanted to have, but there was
Mhm.
always like this thing where you
I
were
don't
getting
hear a
held back.
difference. I don't hear a difference in what we used to do and what I'm doing now. The only thing that I think is different is that I might be getting better at it. I think a lot of people say, "Oh, you peak musically in your 30s or the end or the beginning of your 30s." Nuh-uh, that's not true for everybody. A lot of people think that old bands' music go downhill. This is a new band, and I still feel like I'm 20, and I still have so much creativity, and I still get excited about a cool riff that I did, and I can't wait to turn it into a song. I always feel like I'm progressing, and I would know if I wasn't. So I'd probably still do music, but I probably wouldn't get so excited and motivated about it. I would probably just put out stuff. I am so excited about our new record, Synergy Restored. I think Campaign was a great sampler, and it's an awesome record. And I got to work with you again. I got to show some of the different styles and colors that we used to do in the past, like To All of You, and Close Yet Far, and Disengage the Simulator. There's so many different palettes to those songs, the sound of those songs, that Volume 1, each song sounds like a different band and a different style. So that album, Campaign, our first album, is a sampler. It's kind of like Volume 1. This song is heavy. This song's melodic. This song was written by Matty J, who used to be in the band. This is a cover song. This is an instrumental song. So it's kind of like a Whitman's chocolate sampler of the band, of what 96 is capable of. But the new album is so focused, and it's so loud, and it's not overproduced. It's not the things that we used to put up front in the mix that drowned out the guitars and made everybody say, "Whoa, what's going on here?" is now far in the back. So the vocals and the riffs do most of to get the song across. So, and I love every single song. We actually got a bunch of us together and we said, okay, if we have to pick the first song off of Synergy Restored to show to our fans and to people that aren't into us yet, they're going to find out about us, what song off of the new album should it be? And all of us had a different song. None of us said the same song. So we all have our own favorite songs on the new record, where it used to be obvious. Oh, 96 Bitter Beings and Disengage are the cool songs on Volume 1. Everything else is whatever. You know? So this record is just, I listen to it every day. I've got 16 mixes of it. The only thing I can't seem to do is get it out. But that's worked out, and we're moving ahead on there. So
here's a question about that, though. Are there any real... This is a question by Clarabelle again. Are there any real drums on the new record, at least as the bass maybe was sampled or mixed in? That's I think I'd have to. They're asking if there's any real drums on the new album.
Yes, of course. There's drums on the old album.
Yeah,
but you know what? The thing about here's the thing. When we used to record on 2-inch tape, and we would get our drum sounds, we would get these drum sounds and then replace them with other sounds, with other samples. We would sample the drum, we would sample the snare. Here's how we do it. I go in with a couple ideas to a click track. Then we put like a little like drum machine thing in there. We give the song to Tim. And then Tim memorizes the song and what he wants to do with it. Then he comes in and does the drums after I've put the guitars on. He comes in and does the drums. We get our drum tones, but not from them. We record from the microphones, but we put the drums in and change the sounds, just like we don't mic amps anymore. We get better sounding guitars and bass from reamping. Because A, it's too much work. B, you might not like the result, and I'm not into this dry sounding like garage mic the drums and however it turns out. That's like kind of elitist bullshit. Like, you know, you got to do it completely organic. It has to be bullshit. We all play on the records more than CKY ever. I mean, it was just, you know, two people and occasionally you on drums. You know, but now, I mean, it's like, then after he does the drums and we figure out what sound we want for the drums, then I re-record my parts and I'll do bass. Okay. So I'll re-record my guitars so that they match Tim's drum tracks. Then I'll do bass. And then Sean, on his own time, without telling me, sneaks into the studio and redoes my bass lines and makes them better. I don't notice until I hear the difference, which I eventually notice, and he's much better at bass than I am. And I'm glad that the last two albums he snuck in and replaced my bass tracks, because it's a world of difference. He's a bass player, I am not. So he would go in and make them creative, not all over the place. We're not talking like it's not. It follows the music, but there's a different vibe to it. Then once it's all done, I'll put the vocals on. We'll make the snare sound the way we want to. We'll edit things that don't sound right. You know, we're able to edit because we play to a click. Everybody does. And we add and take out. I make sure that there's at least 10 vocals so that we have a variety to choose from, you know, which is kind of like the old days. And you have kind of like a huge buffet of sounds. Like, oh, Darren did 10 vocal tracks. Let's find the best ones to be the harmonies, and maybe we'll put some whispers in there, or he did some screaming on this part. We'll put that in. So you can take stuff in and out. You get the snare drum you want, the bass drum sounds you want, the cymbal sounds you want, and then you edit it, and it becomes one tight piece of thing that pleases the 21st century ear. I never
Um,
liked raw. You know this from the very first day. I do not like raw sounding bands. I never liked the way we sounded live because we were raw live. It was completely different. We did not sound like our albums when we played live until we got you to play keyboards. And we
that
had
was
5
fun.
people in the band. We sounded a little bit more like our records, but when we were 4-piece, we did not sound like our albums at all. And I had fun playing live, but I would never want to hear us live. That's why I never
I
really pushed for a live album.
I actually really enjoyed at playing keyboards,
It's very
and
easy to be a
also,
raw garage band, you know.
yeah, I think that it's, and I think adding a real, because a lot of bands today put tracks, they put backing tracks, they play to the click, and then they put the backing tracks. I guess I'm against that in a way. I don't think that putting a backing track is as cool as if you have a keyboard player and you want to add those sounds. Why don't you just have a real person? Of course, it makes it harder because you have an extra person to feed and put on the road and stuff. And I understand where people
That was
come
going to be
from,
my
but
point.
yeah,
But the only backing tracks that I think should be allowed are the little like atmospheric things that add to the total sound. But no, you shouldn't go up there without a bass player and have a bass player playing to a click track. You know, there are certain things you shouldn't have guitars, you know,
yeah,
that aren't being played, or drums or anything like that. Maybe the things that you can't do live, like the things that you came up with, that you experimented with, that you recorded and you can't even remember how you got the sound. Maybe you could put those things up there to help beef it up a little bit.
mm.
But yeah, no, I don't agree that the basic tracks of a band should ever be in a live mix. That's ridiculous. What are they? What are you there for?
And also, I said that I really like the new sounds that you're working on now with the new band. But I do want to say it's not that I think that there was some amazing things that happened back even in the Groundhog days and onwards in the recording studio. And I think obviously you guys had some great things going on. And I'm not saying anything bad about those, but I'm just saying that I like the fresh new, like you said, you're playing better. It's not any, but I think there's just having a different producer's touch. It just gives things a little, for me at least, it gives it a little different perspective. I like that. I don't think, sticking to the same person all the time is always a good thing.
Yeah, because you disagree. And when you want something so badly and the other person refuses to allow it, then you grow to resent not just the person, but you resent the song. But that didn't happen too much. If one of us felt strongly about something, we would try to compromise. I mean, we were civil in that way. Most of the arguments that we had weren't musical at all. They were other things, ridiculous things. But now it's like working with Ken and Sean and Tim and Matt Sheehan, who helps in the studio. We're usually on the same page. It's like, I'm going to try this. And they'll be like, that was killer, And with all the experience that I've had recording and all that I've learned, I know when something is subpar. And I've had so many ups and downs with trying to find my way that now at this point, I can put down something on tape and say, you know what, let's not touch that right now. We have a couple songs that I wrote that we're gonna put on Synergy, but I'm like, I don't like what I did here, and that's really rare because I spent so much time on it. But I'm like, I'm not feeling this. This is something I would have done 10 years ago that would have been that like sniped or something. Songs that people don't even really like,
One of the things that I remember in the Groundhog time was talking about different recording techniques. I don't know if you remember this or not, but when you were recording 96, the vocals, there was one moment where you guys had a microphone in the middle of the room, and one person it was you and I forget who else was doing the vocals, was facing one way and the other person was facing the other way. And it was during the parts, the oohs over 96. You know that part of the song when you're like, ooh, and you're just singing those. That was really interesting. I don't know if you're cutting out, if you can hear me or not, but hopefully you are. Darren's having some internet problems, but that's okay because we're live and anything and everything does happen. And I might have to bring him out and bring him back in just to see if that helps. So I will do that, actually. So I purposely kicked Darren out, but because for good reason, I have to bring him back in because we were losing his connection. So don't be alarmed. We will find him and I will bring him back in when I see him in the chats. And oh, by the way, thank you guys for joining. This has been super fantastic, of course. And we we want to do this every week. So I think, but also we're going to need your help. So if you guys, I'll have to post something after this, asking if you guys want us to do this again, because that would be good to hear from you guys if you guys are interested in this or not. But I would like to do this every week, and so would Darren. So, but I'm looking for him to come back in, and we will see. We've been going for quite a long time on the stream, and just had that really good point I wanted to ask him before he got cut off, but that's okay. We will see if he comes back in or not. I see 96 Bitter Beings fan club is trying to come into the chats, of course. Kenneth is watching. Okay, everybody's here. It's just that the internet over there is a little bit. Definitely, again, I could listen to this all night. Awesome. Thank you, Visual Delusion. Do it at a reasonable time. Yeah, that's another thing. That's why I wanted to call the show yesterday and today because, well, I don't know what time it is now, but when we started this, it was yesterday for Darren and tomorrow. For me, it was yesterday, and for Darren, it was tomorrow. So I was like, yes, tomorrow. Well, Darren said something like that, but that would be funny. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's gone, and if he's gone and he's not coming back for whatever reason, for technical issues, very interesting. Sacrament 66, thank you for joining, of course. Yeah, so maybe this will be the end of it. If I don't see him back in the next moment or two, I will end the stream here, which is exactly, didn't plan on it, but that kind of works out because now we're going to want more. Hopefully we want to do this again. I just woke up, so I'm having a really nice time listening to this and drinking coffee. Yeah, me too. This is early for me. I already finished my coffee, so I'm looking forward to having some more coffee. But you guys have been great. I've also been trying. Oh, here he is. He is back. He is back. All right. Let's see. Maybe the connection will be better now that we're bringing him back in again. A fresh new connection. We will see. But sometimes what happens is I'm going to have to try it like this. Let's see if this works. Visual Delusion, Rock Criminals are here. Sebastian. Sometimes you guys can see Darren, but right now I don't see him. Yeah, I think you guys can see him right now, but I don't see him. So I have to take him out and bring him back in again. It's an Instagram thing. It's something I've been learning over the time of doing this. If Darren wants to try to come on one more time, let's see if we can make it work. Third time's a charm, hopefully. Let's see. It might work this time. I think it's going to work. Yay! It does. It's so glitchy.
My phone,
Instagram
check this out.
sometimes.
This house is haunted, okay? I live in the desert at the corner. My phone and my internet went out at the same exact fucking time. My kids are running around trying to figure out how to sign back on. So I'm charging the phone. Okay. I heard what you said. You want to leave them wanting more, which is a good idea. We don't want to talk about everything because we need to do this Sunday and every day for the rest of our lives. Every Sunday for the rest of our lives. So let's stop here. And thanks to everybody. Thanks to you. Let's make this a great. I love it. I love this Sunday night, 11 o'clock California time. What time is it for you when we do this Sunday?
That's what time? No. That's what I'm saying. It's yesterday.
So you're Saturday.
Me. I'm Monday.
You're Monday. Monday at what time?
Well, at the time we started this, it was Monday morning at 9 o'clock in the morning.
So it's 9 a.m. every Monday for you, and it's 11 p.m. every Sunday for me.
Yes, that's the thing. It's hilarious.
Okay. Let's call it the Sun. What was it going to be called? The Sun.
Yeah,
The
yestermorrow.
yesterday.
That was you came up with that. I don't know. That's good though. It's
It doesn't quite roll off the tongue. What did you say it was? What it should be? You had an idea.
no, I just said mine was really quirky. It was just yesterday and tomorrow. The
Oh.
yesterday and tomorrow show, but it's too long. We'll figure it out. Maybe people watching can come up with some ideas too,
That's
if they
true.
have any ideas or what to call it.
Yestamara, like Yestrmorra.
Yes, Tamara. Yeah,
Yes, Tamara.
that's
That
the East Coast accent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that rolls off the tongue.
Yes,
So
Tamara.
let's start putting some bucks together so we can get some promotion going for Yestamara.
Yeah. Well, hey, Darren,
I'm
I think
joking.
this is great. I know. We're gonna do this. We're gonna do this again. We're gonna do this on Sunday. But everybody watching, I hope that you guys. I'll post something after this, and we'd like to hear from you guys. If you guys want us to do this again, just
I
let
did
us know. But
some interesting questions come up that I didn't get the chance to answer. So if
yeah,
anybody,
me too.
I'm on Facebook. You know, I'm gonna be on Instagram more. I go live not anonymously, but randomly go live on Facebook. So, and I heard you have a new single out, so I want to hear that.
Yeah, I just put it out. Thanks to Sacrament. I this amazing Russian girl who did the artwork, and she's awesome. So I love using her artwork, which is cool. I've never done that before. Use somebody else's artwork for
Yeah,
a
I know.
song.
Yeah, but
But
streaming? Are you streaming it, or is it a physical thing, or is it just
no, it's
streaming?
I'm just streaming it because I would love to do I would love to do what you just did, put out like an album, but I need to save up for that. So in the meantime, I'll just release little things here and there.
That's awesome. Send me a link to
Yeah.
that. I really want to hear it because,
Okay.
as you know, I'm getting in the habit of using your songs.
Yeah. That's good, man. That's what they're there for everybody to use, right? I
You
mean,
write
come on.
really, really good.
Well, thank you very much, Darren. That means
You have wrote
means a
great
lot.
songs, and you added a lot to the old CKY stuff, a lot more than you get credit for. I know that. So,
Well, hey, this is perfect. Let's leave it at that. We will continue this again next week. Thank you all for
see you
joining in.
next Monday.
See you next tomorrow. Tomorrow,
Yes,
yes,
tomorrow
tomorrow.
or Smunday.
Smunday. See you next Monday, everybody.
All
All right,
right.
Darren. I'll talk to you later.
All right. See ya.
Bye.